And we're live! Woo-hoo!
And I think I'm raving a little bit after that music, Tim.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing.
Pretty good.
So the more long-time viewers may have noticed my normal co-host, Christelle, is not here. And that's either because her son has a migraine or because Ellen has turned her into a toad. I'll let the viewers decide which one of those has happened. So let's start off with the $10 million dollar question or question dollar million. Who is Ellen Sentier, and why are you not afraid of being called a witch or a shaman or some Welsh name that I can't pronounce?
Awenydd was the name.
Awenydd. Okay.
You got it. You got it. Well, I'm me most of the time. Anyway, I'm a woman of a certain age who does all sorts of strange stuff and was actually brought up in the old magical ways of this country by my family and their family before them for generations and generations and generations. Because despite what people think, we actually do have an indigenous magic culture here.
Okay, so is it Awenydd was what is that? And I mispronounced that again.
Shall we do it together? When.
If. So when, if. So the letter R
with a TH.
If. Okay.
Let's give it up.
When, if. Okay.
Yeah.
So where did you were saying that's like a Welsh Celtic name?
Yeah.
Did you grow up in Wales, or is this somewhere else in the UK that you were brought up and you learned this stuff?
No, it is a Welsh word, but Welsh comes from the old British language, which, if you want to be all techie about it and sound like a professor, is Brythonic. It's where our actual name Britain comes from.
Yeah.
And no, I was born on Dartmoor and grew up on Exmoor, and all down the west coast of Britain and down the west coast of Europe, France and Spain. We were all that old Celtic people. Have you ever been to Brittany, the country in North France?
No, I've been to Devon and I've been to Cornwall, and even Wales, but I haven't been to Brittany. Bizarrely.
Well, Brittany is part of it too, and Brittany means Little Britain. So we were part of all that long culture, going back, God knows how far. And we all spoke the same language. And if you speak Welsh, you'll likely be understood by people who speak Cornish, and you will also be understood by people who speak Breton.
Oh.
And you can also be understood, to a degree, by the people who used to be the Picts in Scotland.
Yeah.
That sort of Aberdeenshire and North and the Highlands. So we were all over the place, and the culture is too. And I was brought up in it. It's what you did in the village, in all the villages that I grew up in.
Okay. So what does that mean? So what makes you as are when if and are when if what how is that different from anybody else? I mean, like I don't really want to say about what are your magical powers then, but it's like it's probably not that's a simplification of it. Like what makes that you different from somebody else who's not an Awenydd?
If they've been brought up in the tradition of their own country, probably not a lot.
Yeah.
Like if they were Native Australian people or Native American people, who I've met several, not, in a funny situation, but literally where they live. One of the basics for all of us is that we sort of know in our bones that we are part of the whole world, that, a tree isn't a separate thing from us and an animal isn't a separate thing from us. We're all made of atoms and we all are made of the same stuff. and we can't live without trees, and we can't live without animals. So we're very nature oriented, and it's in the bones, in the blood. So all native peoples, I suspect, you will find are that way. We have our own ways of working with them. I don't commonly turn people into toads, despite what
Yeah.
they do have to upset me a little, because I actually quite like toads, and so I
Yeah.
really want to inflict a human on them. But
Yeah.
the basic thing is, you are part of the world, and you're willing to talk to it, and you're willing to listen to it. And at the moment, with ecology as it is, and we're all being helped to understand that not mowing your lawn is a good thing. If you've got that kind of inner attitude, then you're going to be on side with nature. You're going to be on side with leaving the grass long so the butterflies can breed and all that kind of thing. Does that help?
Yeah. So it sounds like you're almost, it's not so much that you're something special, it's that you have what we should all have, but modern society in a way has taken that away from most people because we moved away from the traditional approach. Is that a fair assessment?
I think you've hit the spot, actually, Tim. Yes. We're not special,
Yeah.
except in the fact that we're probably relatively rare.
Yeah.
But imagine, if you think yourself back to, or try and think yourself back to being like a hunter-gatherer.
Yeah.
You've got to know the forest, you've got to know the plains, you've got to know how the animals work, or you won't eat. And so you do. And they know how you work, and you don't, you'll go and eat them when necessary, but you don't hate them, and you're not frightened of them particularly, unless you meet a hungry cave bear or something.
Yeah.
So your relationship with them is much more like, well, in a sense, almost like our relationship. We a couple of humans chatting together.
Yeah. So, like, to juxtapose this a lot, I love the word juxtapose. I'm not sure if I'm even using it rightly, but you were telling me in the pre-chat that you worked for the Ministry of Defence in
I
software
did.
development for a long time, which may seem to be the total opposite of that. So was it a case that you were in tune with nature and then you moved away from it and now you've moved back, or is it a case that you always had this Awenydd identity, a lot parallel to your normal quotes programming job?
Well, yeah, the latter, really. We all know how to shapeshift, and that doesn't mean necessarily turning yourself into a dolphin.
Yeah.
It'd be nice, but not many people do.
Well, it's also quite impractical in most offices to be a dolphin.
It's really bad, actually. You get so dry. It's not a good idea. But I can appear with people in a manner that is not going to threaten them. Whereas if I sort of turned up with my drum and started chanting spells at them in the Ministry of Defence, quite a few of them might have a bit of like, do we really need this woman?
Yeah.
Understandably. But interesting one, I met a lot of, I worked closely with servicemen in the Navy and the RAF mostly, but I also had a bit of a deal with special ops people, special services people, and I met several who are also of the same ilk as me.
Yeah.
And they were soldiers or sailors or, flew jet aircraft and that kind of thing. And one of them, he ran a fantastically good alchemy group in Bath.
Yeah.
And he was the wing commander.
Yeah.
So it gets everywhere. But it wasn't against it in that I'm not against protecting and looking after my country.
Yeah.
So I might not agree with what the government said. That's fine. Lots of us don't. But on the other hand, the men who actually went out there and put themselves in harm's way in Belfast, in Afghan, no, those guys are okay. And I'm quite happy to work with them and help them.
Okay. So, I mean, the main thing you do to make money is life coaching and writing books and the like. So, I know that the shamanism and Awenydd
Stick with shamanism, Tim.
Shamanism is the key to where your coaching skills come from. So,
yeah.
When did you realize that? And briefly, how does it help you in terms of helping other people to find their what are the skills we've lost that are the most important for people that we should get by reconnecting with that historical indigenous past?
Shall I start with those and then go back to the first question?
Oh yeah, do the questions any order you like.
Right. One that we have lost very much, and I think as a host you'll agree with me, is how often do we listen to someone and not be thinking, what am I going to reply?
Yeah.
We don't listen. And when we have this bad tendency usually to put what we've heard into a box that we already know, which may not be what the person actually said or thought. Now, you're taught not to do this in the old ways, and you will get brought up gently by, the old lady who lives next door said, "That's not what I said, darling. Can you tell me what I said again?"
Yeah.
And you go, "Oh, right." And listening is very important. Another skill, which is like this with it, is asking. I'm unfortunately disabled. Well, it's not unfortunate. I am disabled.
Yeah.
I've got rheumatoid arthritis and all sorts of other things. So I can't walk very fast. I have to be careful up and down steps and things like that. And I usually walk in the town with a stick. People drive me completely bonkers because they see me with a stick, and so many will grab my arm and try to help me. And what they usually do, so far they haven't made it, is nearly kill me. They don't say, "Are you all right, dear? Would you like a hand?"
Yeah.
They assume. And we so often do that. "Oh, I thought you meant," is such an obvious phrase, instead of, "Did you mean so and so, or have I got that wrong?" Now, those two skills are really fundamental, and you ask it actually in the old ways of everything, including like your stomach. "Do you really want tea now? Would you prefer a coffee?"
Yeah.
And it becomes like, don't just grab for the kettle. You think about what you want beforehand. But in coaching and all of those related skills, I'm also a psychotherapist as well. You need to know what the person actually said to you. And it's very important not to get it wrong when you're asking them if you're checking what they said.
Yeah.
"Oh, well, I really had a row with my husband this morning," says the client. "You were angry with your husband this morning, were you?" Wasn't what she said.
No.
But she may, because we're all very keen on pleasing people, especially the therapist we're just paying, she may say, "Oh, I better say yes to that." So you end up way off course. And those two tools are so very helpful. But it goes further than that. Shall I carry on?
Oh, yes, please do.
Right. Easy way is think of a tree.
Yeah.
And so a tree has roots underneath and a trunk going up and branches and flowers and leaves and things sticking out the top. Your inner life, your personality, the things you're doing, the things that make you happy or sad are like that. They have roots going down into the ground, and they have the trunk which lives in the ordinary everyday air and is your everyday life. But they also have branches, and they have the flowers and the fruits, which are probably your aspirations and your dreams and the things you think, oh, if only I won the lottery, or I can't ever make that come true, really, but if only I could. And people get stuck. And so when people say, what do you do? I say, I help people who feel stuck. And often the stuckness goes right back into the roots, maybe to childhood, parent, brother, teacher, university, whatever. Somebody said or did something, or they had to do something, and it wasn't quite right for them. It wasn't really about them. They were compromising in ways they didn't want to. So we have to dive down into that. And that's another thing you do a lot of in the old ways. It's like going down, you hear it called, it's visiting the ancestors. Yeah, well, your ancestors are the things that screwed you up in your past as well.
Yeah.
So you visit those and have a look and start sorting them out. And then, because that's usually depressing, you go right up to the top and say, now, what do you really want to happen? What are your dreams? But I can't do that. Yes, let's see if we can. So that's connecting. But there's ways to connect. Now, in the modern life, you said earlier things we'd lost, which is good. In any ordinary human being has 4 major functions. And Jung was one of the first to really point this out to ordinary people who weren't on this. You've got your guts, your instincts.
Yeah.
You've got your emotions. Most people have something of a handle on those. You've got your head. That's your mind. That's what everybody is taught. That's the only thing that's worth listening to. And you've got your intuition, and that's all woo-woo, isn't it? Rubbish,
Yeah.
So we live our lives using one of our 4 functions, possibly 2 with the emotions. I help people use all 4. When did you last walk into a room, Tim, and feel, oh, I don't like this, I shouldn't be here? Or anywhere.
Yeah, probably like a few months ago.
Yeah.
I'm kind of thinking that sometimes you go and you think, oh, beforehand, I'm going to do it. And then you're like, I don't like it here.
Oh, no, I don't like it in here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's probably, in fact, almost certainly your guts talking.
Yeah.
But your head cheerfully says, oh, don't be silly, Tim. It's fine. Carry on. And then about half an hour or so, whenever later, you go, oh, dear, I shouldn't be here, or whatever it was. And most people have experiences that are like, I know so-and-so is going to phone me. I know this is going to happen. I'm going to put, even, if you're in the mood, I'm going to put the money on that horse. It's going to win. And it does.
Yeah.
Intuition.
Yeah.
But we take no notice of those. So what I do with the coaching is help people to notice, to take notice of them, to listen to them, and gradually learn to ask your gut, should I really be doing this?
Yeah. So do you have any kind of standard exercises you run through with people? And obviously not giving away your trade secrets here, but if somebody wants to get more in touch with their intuition, their emotions, and the other one which I've already forgotten. Well, obviously
I think, yeah, I was just going to have a laugh at that one. Yeah. Well done,
but there's
Tim.
a fourth one as well that first one
your guts.
The guts.
Your instincts.
Okay.
Yeah, your guts. Yeah. Yes, I do. And it's the first exercise all the kiddies in the village who parents were on the old ways, is taught. And you get taught it usually by a parent who will sing it or say it to you when you're in your cradle. And it's about starting at your heart. Feel yourself in your heart. And you can do this even with a kiddie, but it's easy with a grown-up. And you go right down your spine to the heart of the earth. And there you meet, and you are a spark at this point, and your spark goes all the way down there. And it meets the spark that is the heart of Mother Earth. And the two of you greet and play, and then you come back up through the earth, through your spine, out of the top of your head, cross the atmosphere, cross space, and you dive into the heart of the sun.
Yeah.
And you meet Sunspark. And the three of you play. And you come back down to the heart of Mother Earth, and you go back up to the heart of Father Sun. Up and down, up and down. And I do this with all clients. I'm quite good at talking you through it gently as a led meditation. And they all come out of it like, oh, you know, you've got somebody who's sitting there like this with the shoulders and the whole job. And it goes like that. And they're getting in touch because they're letting go of all the fear of every day.
Yeah. So I'm going to do my usual, like, something that came to mind when I should have been listening, but I was actually. I did.
Yeah. Okay.
But oh no! Don't misunderstand me. But something that you said earlier on was, and I think in the pre-chat actually, but is the indigenous beliefs that you have being based in the UK?
Mm-hmm.
Are they tailored to the UK environment? So if somebody came from Australia who was an Aborigine, for example, and they came over to here, is it the same set of beliefs or are there differences? Because
there will be differences.
Yeah. And how is that different from the whole general, like, people with crystals, woo-woo stuff, new age thing? Is that related, or is that a kind of a comic version of the old ways, so to speak?
I wouldn't say it's normally a comic version. That was a nice one. But usually people who are working with crystals, certainly at the beginning, they're wanting to do magic. They're wanting to, it is a power thing a little bit. I want to be able to do that. I want to have the power to do that. When you've been doing it for a long time, you're not interested in the power to do that. You're only interested in helping others. Now, that will be through all indigenous people. But Australia is not in the least like Britain.
Yeah.
So all places, you probably heard of it, all places have their own spirit of place. So there's a spirit, I'm here in Shropshire, who's like about Shropshire. Now, they are different to the ones in Devon that I grew up with.
Oh, okay.
And my best friend lives in Aberdeenshire. And up there, the spirit is different, similar, but different to where I live in Shropshire or where I lived in Devon.
Yeah.
And the practices are too, which I've noticed as I've travelled around the country and around various parts of Europe. There's lots of similarity, but I was down in the Basque country working with some Basque people a few years back. They've got the mountains, the Pyrenees.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to go to Scotland and go to Ben Nevis or Snowdon to get a mountain here.
Yeah.
It's different. And they're all over the place. They're gorgeous and, you know, tree covered and snow covered. And the feel is different. And when you've been brought up in this kind of way, or when you've learned this kind of way, you go to a new place and you say, hello, I'm from Devon. How's things here? And you do that like in your head, and you feel into the land. And I had it when I was leading. It was a huge, big convention of people from all around the world a few years back, and there was me and a male friend leading the thing, as we were from this country and these traditions. And there were people from Mexico came, and one of them wanted to offer tobacco, and we had to stop him because tobacco doesn't grow here.
Oh, yeah.
And, he said, this is a gift from my country. I said, well, shall we ask the spirit place here if she'd like it? And he looked at me and he said, oh, they do that here. You could see it behind his eyes. I said, you ask. If she says yes, then that's fine. So we use mead a lot here, the honey drink, because we can make it. And I've taken mead to other places. But before I will use it, I will sort of say, is it okay? And if the feel comes back, yes, then it's okay. If it's no, then, thanks very much, but no thanks.
Yeah.
Like giving a pair of socks to you for Christmas, Tim.
I know. Well, yeah. Especially if you got some horrid design on them.
Yeah, absolutely.
We had a comment this is actually from Beth, who seems to be using her corporate account.
Hello, Beth.
But your techniques were good when you put. I think she was talking about this was some time back when you were talking about your meditation technique. So what is your? I'm going to go off on another. We haven't even talked about your books yet. We have to talk about your book in a minute. But hopefully, have you got a few more minutes? You don't have to go exactly.
I've got a few more minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. What is your viewpoint on what I will call established religions? So
you mean the religions of the book? Yeah.
Christianity, Hinduism, etc. What is your viewpoint? Do you think they're part of the way there, or do you think they are an impediment to the old ways, so to speak?
Oh, they can be both.
Yeah.
In the village where I grew up, the sacred site of the village, which is actually quite unique, is also the site of the church. Now, the vicar is a lovely man. He was a naval parson in the World War II, so he had his head screwed on a bit, and he was really interested in everything. And he and my dad and a couple of the others used to chat about it forever. And I don't know that anybody much does it now, but we used to plough with horses when I was first in the village. And horse brasses, you see them in the pub.
Yeah.
Well, they're all part of the regalia that a plough horse uses or wears. And they're there to connect the horse with the spirit of the land that he's just going to carve into the skin of. Yeah. So we used to do a little ceremony with them before the first ploughing, which used to be in February. And the vicar said, you can come and do that in the church if I can join in. Now, that's getting together. Yeah. And that's no impediment. That's beautiful. But of course, just think of the witch trials, for instance.
Yeah.
It can be a real impediment. I suspect, certainly Hinduism has, and I suspect that, I know that Judaism has, because it's very, very old, and Christianity and Muslimism are much later, but there is the roots of this. Yeah. Now, people like organizations, people like power, people like politics in religion. If you get those people taking it over, it's going to be a nuisance.
Yeah. No.
So,
yeah, because I remember reading a book by Joseph Campbell, who's the person who wrote The Hero's Journey, but he also wrote another book called Myths to Live By.
Yep.
And what that said, which is how Western religion, i.e. Islam, Judaism, and Christianity,
Mm.
have a separate entity as God. So God's out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Where most of the Eastern religions, Buddhism, Hinduism, to some extent, it's everybody's part of God.
Yes.
And that sounds much more like what you're suggesting than
It is.
the
Yeah.
separate entity of God.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mentioned your book because we might as well. Have you got one book or more than one book?
I'm currently writing my 3rd novel and my 13th non-fiction.
Oh, okay. So you've got multiple books. Like hideously
Just a
poor.
few.
I did actually know that you had more than one book, and I think I had a picture, but it's gone out my brain. So, well, anyway, for this, but let's say like somebody who's watching this thinks, I love this woman, I love everything she says, but I want one book to start with. What would be one book you've written, or somebody else's book? But I'd suggest your book because you've got your 5 minutes of fame. What book should they start with of yours?
I would suggest they start with the non-fiction one, which is called Elen of the Ways.
Okay.
And at the same time, if they're into reading fiction, to read my first novel, The Owl Woman.
Okay. And what is
They
that?
will get the same thing in different voices. So Elen of the Ways is about me.
Yeah.
It's not, it's not an autobiography or anything,
Yeah.
but it's all like the stuff that I grew up with, the stuff that I do, the stuff that I do when I go away for an away trip with a friend. Like we went to Scotland, and so we went to Orkney actually, and we were playing in the old sacred sites there, working and playing, and what happened, and how we went and journeyed with an ancient reindeer herd when they used to have them there. They have red deer there, but they don't have reindeer anymore. That kind of thing. It's how I learned to midwife the dead with the healer midwife woman next door when I was 8 years old.
Yeah.
So you learn a lot about that, and it will give you an idea of how we feel in the old ways. The Owl Woman was built around the legend of the sacred well in the village that I grew up in, which was actually owned and cared for by my aunt. And it was built into the wall of our garden. So it was very much part of it. And I built the story on that legend, and it's set in 1999 or something like that, about modern people, about people who live and do ordinary work like this, but who also know all these old ways and the normal type problems they have and the magic type problems they have, and how these get all mixed up and how they solve them.
Yeah. Well, I think you've got a fan in Beth.
Lovely, Beth. If you get on my website, love, you can have a chat with me.
And your website is elensentier.com, is it?
That's me. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you have any trouble, I'll put the links in the QR code, which is on my page. You can scan that, and that will take you to a link where it basically says, "Here's the show interview. Here's the links." So it's like,
great.
You had me with the whole midwifery of the dead thing, because I want to talk about that for a second. Because we've been like, from what you've described so far as the shamanism stuff, it sounds like, well, you're just in touch with hugging trees and getting in touch with nature, but midwifery of the dead sounds a bit more interesting. So can you talk a bit about what is that, and how did you develop it?
Well, I imagine it came out of probably even the hunter-gatherer level of our people, because we looked after our own dead.
Yeah.
Most of the people in the village would to use the undertaker to look after Auntie was going to cost you an arm and a leg.
Yeah.
And you didn't really want to, because it was somebody else doing it, and this was your aunt, and you wanted to wash her body, and you wanted to set her and lay her out, and you wanted to take her to either the burning or the burial, whichever she'd chosen. And so we used to do that. And there are ways, and ways of, there are herbs and plants and things you use as smoke. There are herbs and plants you use as to help the water that you wash the body with. You actually learn to sit with the body for 3 days and help the soul, because some souls can have a bit of a problem, A, realizing they're dead, and B, getting out and going home. And so you learn to sit with them and to help move them on, which I still do as an aside practice. So that's just one of the things that we do. There's a hell of a lot of practices we have with working with animals, with working with the garden, with working with agriculture. There are lots of things we do, but like you said, I don't want to give too much of that away just like this, because you shouldn't really be using it until you've had a little bit of a chat with somebody and maybe a bit of training, because, you know, it's like using matches wrong.
Yeah.
You can get in trouble. So I don't want to give people too much that will get them in trouble. But that's what we used to do.
Yeah, a little bit of knowledge can be dangerous, can't it? If you don't,
can.
If you teach people how to use the accelerator pedal before the brake.
Yeah, not a good idea. One little thing though, which I think is important for today. How many people have actually seen or worked with a dead body, a dead human body? It was normal for us. So you weren't afraid of death in the same way. And a dead body isn't horrid. And they're not all makes. I mean, the undertakers make them up. Yeah. They're all made up and look pretty. We used to see them straight when Granny had just died, for instance.
Yeah.
And you learn that it's okay. You're going to miss them. You're going to cry. That's fine. But it's okay. And I think people need a lot of that. There is quite a lot of it coming back, but I think people need that.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's one of those things that we've sanitized so much in the Western world. To some extent, I can understand why. It's like if you ever go to like a market in Barcelona or Spain or somewhere, you'll see lots of dead animals hanging up. You won't see that anywhere in the UK or the US.
Not anymore now.
So
not anymore now, but the butchers at home when I was growing up, you'd have the carcasses hung.
Oh yeah, yeah. It used to be, but now everything's so sanitized and everybody acts as if they were mortal. The whole idea is that death is always a surprise. I mean, the funniest thing was like people were saying about the Queen, it being a shock that the Queen died, and it's like, well, she was 90.
For God's sake, yeah.
Like the most obvious person to die would be the Queen.
I know.
And yet
it
people are like,
me
oh,
up.
such a shock. And it's like, well, no. Yeah.
And you thought, I mean, for me, I was sort of thinking, well, she's probably damn glad to be gone.
Yeah.
I mean, after all that time, and the poor lady was tired and she wasn't very well.
No, she lost her husband as well.
And that was awful. So, I mean, but again, it wasn't a shock that he was going to die. I mean, he was 90-something as well.
Yeah.
And it's okay. And the other little thing that people don't realize, and they say, oh, I'm really afraid of death. You know, I never want to think about it. So you're never going to think about, and you're really afraid of the one absolute certainty in life.
Yeah.
You're going to die. I'm going to die. Hopefully not quite yet, but you know. Sorry, that was a downer. I'm sorry.
Interview. We're not having a guest on.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. So to end on a slightly higher note. Well, no, before we end on a higher note, tell everybody about how they can find out about you and get to work with you, do more stuff with you, read your books and all the rest of it.
Right. Well, there's the website, which is elensentier.com. Fairly easy to remember. And you can book a chat with me, a Zoom chat with me on there. you can work with me. You can choose all sorts of things. And all my books are on Amazon. So you just go and look up Ellen Sentier on Amazon if you want to read a book.
Yeah.
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Facebook as Ellen Sentier, but I'm also on Facebook, which you'll probably find me more of, is as Wise Woman Shaman.
Oh, okay.
But Ellen Sentier will probably give you both. And if you're one of them sort of people, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
and Instagram. I don't tweet.
Yeah. Okay.
It's too much to do.
You are on Twitter, though. I think that's the only contact detail I've got for you at the moment, which I
I'm sorry. You better pick up the others.
Yeah. So, to end the show, what is one piece of advice that you could give to people that won't set them onto something that's too much work for them to know? But if there was one change to the world that you want to bring about, and kind of by people understanding something about the indigenous ways, what would it be?
Find a quiet place and maybe have a cup of tea or something and sit there and feel into what would make your heart sing right now.
Oh,
and try and go for that.
Yeah.
What would make your heart sing?
Yeah. So that's good, because that gives me an excuse to play the outro. Thanks to everybody who watched, Beth, and I think there were a few other people who come on. I saw the number go up to 3 at one point, I think.
Whoa.
About a second. I obviously saw Shaman, and then they were like, oh, okay, click away. So thanks to everybody who watched, and we will talk to everybody next week. Next week, we've got a guy, Barak, from Africa, Tweet Chat. He's from Nigeria, I think. So it'll be quite a different change. Anyway, thanks for everyone for watching. Bye.
This is what God requires.